Why communication sometimes feels so hard. Sometimes it can feel that the person that we're talking to are completely self-centered, or that they're too forward and asking us way too many questions. Sometimes it can feel like a person is steering the conversation away from us and onto them. But why is that? A friend some time ago sent me this excellent article by Hailey Magee about 3 communication styles, and I wanted to talk about this today. Okay, the first thing to talk about is volunteers and invite-only. Volunteers will just tell you things. You don't need to ask them questions. They're happy to share information about themselves. They don't like to ask personal questions because it feels to them like they're too curious or too forward. And they assume that you will do the same, that you will just start sharing when you're ready. Invite-only is the opposite. They will wait for you to ask them questions, and if you don't ask them questions, they will feel like you're not interested in them. And they show their care by asking you questions. So for the volunteer, it feels like the invite only doesn't want to open up. And to the invite only, it feels like the volunteer is self-absorbed. As with all conversation types, none of them is good or bad. They just are different. Volunteers keep the conversation going by being open and sharing, and invite only makes you feel seen and cared for. And it feels like they're the ones that are actually listening to you. Both can help each other out if the volunteer would try to ask maybe 1 or 2 more questions, and the invite only would also share something without being asked. Then we have askers and guessers, where the asker will ask you a lot of questions and they can also expect a no. They're totally fine with that. While the guesser on the other side is asking you questions only when they think the answer is going to be yes. And if you ask them a lot of questions, they're going to feel that you're presumptuous because they think that you're also a guesser. So you also only ask when you're pretty sure the answer is going to be yes. So to an asker, a guesser can feel passive aggressive. And for the guesser, it can feel that the asker is presumptuous. The good thing about an asker is that they're easier to read. You don't really have to mind read them. It's pretty clear what they want. While the guesser is feeling a little bit more considerate because they're only going to ask you questions if they're sure that you're going to say yes and that you're comfortable. An easy advice for the two would be if the asker, for example, could say that they totally expect a no. They can ask a question and be like, it's totally fine if you say no. That makes it way easier for the guesser. And the guesser could make it easier by also sometimes asking questions and are totally fine with getting a no. Then third, you have builders and maintainers. If you tell a story to a builder, they're going to try to build on top of that story. So they're going to share also about themselves. For example, if you tell them about your horrible boss, they're going to tell about their horrible boss. While you tell the same story to a maintainer and they would say, oh my God, that sounds awful. What happened next? Or what else is there? The problem here again is to the builder, the maintainer can feel a little bit sterile because they never share anything personal about themselves. While to the maintainer, the builder feels self-centered and self-focused because they try to take the situation and make it about themselves. The builder has their strength in keeping the conversation moving forward because they kind of always add to it, while the maintainer tries to make you feel seen. They also could help each other out. If the builder would stay with a little bit more focus on the maintainer before jumping to their own story, and if the maintainer sometimes would share also things about themselves. Here's the point about all of this. Somebody does something and you decide something based on what they say to you, but not on their intention. Because their intention might be different to yours, and you always measuring how they react to what yourself are doing. So if you sometimes are in a situation, you can use the little advice bits that I gave you just to like open up your style a little bit more. But you can also just tell the person, if you notice like they never ask you questions, that you can just tell them, hey, why don't you ask me questions? Or tell them, hey, I would feel more comfortable if you would also ask me a question sometimes. Or could you maybe share a little bit more about yourself? And of course, it also helps to kind of figure out what type you are and think about that and think about the other types, keep them in mind. I myself would describe myself as a volunteer. I like to share things about myself unprompted, but I'm a guesser. I don't like to ask a lot of questions because I can feel it can make people uncomfortable, but as we learned today, that's not always the case. And I feel like a builder that is trying to advance the story, build on what somebody else said, and then gather more experience from everybody else. So yeah, whenever I run into problems like that or have a discussion about how a conversation doesn't feel good, I come back to Hailey Magee's article and try to keep the different conversation styles in mind. I hope this was helpful and entertaining to you.